Good story on Mars.
Yep, indeed, a good story. Very simple one, basically, but especially as it's Mars Week, it's worth noting that the Perseverance rover, Percy for short, has been trundling around Jezero crater on Mars, collecting rock samples, and it has now collected sample number 7. And everything seems now to be going well. There were problems earlier. You maybe remember we talked on an earlier show when some of the samples got stuck in the mechanism and they had to try and get them shaken out, which they eventually did. So they've now drilled a very nice, neat sample from another rock on the floor of the crater and stashed it safely on board. It'll be in a sealed container, and as I was alluding to earlier, that will be one of the samples that hopefully will be brought back to Earth at the end of the decade, early next decade, by the sort of the final part of this sequence of missions, the sample return mission. So nothing terribly exceptional about this, except that they're all different samples, different types of rocks. The thing about the Jezero crater is that it has an ancient river delta flowing into it, obviously caused by liquid water at some stage. So it's a prime site for the possibility of relics of ancient life. Very, very simple life, obviously. We're not going to find dinosaur bones or anything like that. So it's going to take one more sample in that area, and then it's going to be heading back more or less towards a space station, but going via the actual delta of the ancient river. And that's probably the most important site of all in terms of being able to find what may be samples with fossils of ancient Martian life. So Perseverance, good news. As I said, there were a few hiccups at the start. It's being guided by the amazing Ingenuity helicopter, which is a story in itself, of course. But it can get up and get a good view of what's ahead and say, right, there's something worth investigating over there. And assuming nothing goes wrong with the drilling and the sample collecting, there'll be quite a few dozen more samples altogether by the time this mission is ended. So that's number 7. Lucky, if you like, March the 7th in Mars Week. Well done to Perseverance.
Absolutely. And it's one of the missions, again, that it needs to be lauded. The descent EDL system on this was only the second time it'd ever been used, and again, absolutely nailed the landing. And it's been delivering fantastic science. The problem, as Terry just alluded to, is that there was a whole sequence of missions designed to collect these samples. Now, it's interesting. You're drilling core samples and then you're putting them in tubes. Obviously, because you don't want additional exposures to the Martian surface. If you're drilling into the rocks, you want to keep the samples pristine as possible, etc. And it will be the first time I've got Martian meteorites behind me. Martian meteorites are not 10 a penny. They're not common, but we do have many examples, especially from the Allen Hills region. The most famous one, ALH 84001, which was discovered, and they thought initially there could be microscopic microbial life in it at one point. And you got Mars meteorites like Black Beauty, NWA 7034, etc., which are all really famous examples of great Martian meteorites that show evidence of this water kind of percolating through Mars in some point in its distant past. So it's not speculation. We've also got, as Terry said before, the Trace Gas Orbiter, which is looking at, along with some of the surface operations, looking at this methane issue, because that again is another big kind of weird one as to what the heck's creating the methane on Mars. We talked about that many times in the past.